Well, good morning and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I am your host, Mark Mitchell, a preaching minister at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined, as usual, by Steve Fox, a minister for over 50 years and now a proud recipient of a Browns win for the first time in the playoffs. How you doing today, buddy?
Not for the first time.
26 years.
Huh?
Wasn't it 26 years?
25 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not nearly as prepared as I normally am because I had to stay up and watch all the highlights last night. And boy, there were a lot of them. There were a lot of them in the first century, so I never wait a minute. Cleveland just scored again.
That's about how good the Steelers played. I'd already made up my mind if the Steelers had won. Like you, I was going to wear my Steelers shirt.
You have no shame, do you?
But they didn't win, so... And it didn't stop you from wearing your Browns jacket this morning.
Well, with your attire, you never know when you might be out in the woods and have to start a fire.
Well, for those of you who love football, you had a great weekend. My wife joked with me Saturday, said, what are you doing? I said, well, there's 3 football games, a Mountaineer basketball game, and a golf tournament on. What do you think I'm doing?
I was coming into the house about 9 o'clock, and Susie was fixing something out in the kitchen. And I said, hi, honey, I love you. And she said, I love you, too. I said, I'll see you about 11:30 tonight. but waiting for that last night, that was worth the while.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to all those Browns fans.
All 6 of us.
No, there's a bunch more than that. I remember walking in someplace one time, and I actually think I had a Steelers hat on. And it was somebody I knew, and he literally said to me, he said, had I known you like the Steelers, I'd have never liked you at all. I said, what is your team? The Browns? He goes, yeah. I said, I've met a bunch of you Browns fans who hate us.
Well, this has nothing to do with Revelation 14 or 15, but I got to throw this in here. The guy has a little dog on a bar in this saloon, and the guy goes, get that dog off a bar. And he said, people eat there. Get that dog off of there. He said, no, we're watching the football game. We're watching the Browns. He said, yeah, your dog understands the Browns. He said, yeah, we do, every Sunday we watch the Browns. And the Cleveland kicked a field goal about that time. And the dog did 2 backwards flips and started barking. And the bartender said, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't. You're telling me the truth. He really does know football. He said, oh, yeah. He said, well, if he went crazy like that when he kicked a field goal, what in the world does he do when they score a touchdown? He said, I don't know. I've only had him for 2 years.
Well, last night they made up
They made up for it. Yes, they did.
Oh, my goodness. 7 touchdowns last night?
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite impressive. 7 touchdowns, 6 or so field goals.
Which is what they've scored against Pittsburgh in the last 10 years.
Yeah, well, made up for it last night, and they are continuing on. And which is what we need to do, is continue on into Revelations chapter 14. Steve and I talked about it last week, and we're going to mention it again this morning. Apologize. Get something out of my eyes. And it's probably tears because this is a quite difficult topic and subject that we're into. Steve and I were talking about before we came on the air that a lot of confusion happens in Revelations from the very beginning, but you start getting to 13, 14, and 15 and so forth, the confusion gets greater because you think to yourself, how does this stuff make sense in light of everything that we know, first? Secondly, we keep forgetting it's not literal, it's figurative, and we don't know what the figurative expression is being used for. People, as you how many books did you say speculate was been written on this book? I mean, it had to be in the hundreds of thousands.
I don't know the exact figure, but a lot of people. We got a library right over there. It's got a bunch of stuff about Revelation.
A lot of stuff in it about Revelation. So there's been a lot of opinions, and And every time someone says they know when, the date comes, goes, and they go back to their...
They have unlocked with their special key
Yeah.
the meaning to everything in this book.
Not hardly.
No. You'll never catch either one of us saying that.
No, because, again, the best we want to hope is to apply it to what we know and understand of the God and our Savior Jesus Christ, and pick out circumstances that's going on. As you've brought out the two things that we've brought out together, the one you kept talking about, there's a lot of judgment scenes. And the one that I noticed from the beginning was there's a lot of worship scenes.
Mhm.
And they generally almost interact together. There's a judgment and there's a worship of those who's did okay on their judgment side. So,
And we'd like to encourage our audience to keep reading with us, keep looking at it, because you don't have to be afraid of it. Every once in a while, you just learn something that's brand new. Your eyes are open to something else, and you think, well, why did I never see that before? Like this week when I was reading the last part of the last part of 13, I never realized before that the Antichrist was Ben Roethlisberger.
all right.
That's in the NIV.
14. No, it's not in the NIV. I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that version if it was. 14:14. I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man, with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who was seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel who had charge of the fire came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grape from the earth's vines, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles, for a distance of 600 stadia. You brought up a really good point that I hadn't last week, that you went down there and just touched on this. The fact that this angel comes to this person who looks like a man and tells him to do something.
Mm-hmm.
You can't therefore think that, well, that's not the king, the Son of Man, which is oftentimes used as a, more often than not, well, I'm not sure about that statement, so I won't go with it, that it's meant toward God, but it has been used in other times where it wasn't meant toward the Son of God. It's literally meaning
A human being.
human being.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you can do as you go through this book, in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, you have the Sermon on the Mount. In the first part of that, you have the Beatitudes, and all those Beatitudes begin with "Blessed is," or "Blessed are," "Blessed are the," and you've got two of them right here. There are several of them in Revelation, but you've got two of them right here. "Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord henceforth." You either die in the Lord with him or without him. You either die in him or outside him. And he says they are blessed who die that way. "Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors." I used to read this and say, "Oh, no, you shouldn't follow that, man. You should be out there working all the time, out there digging away, doing what your parents told you to do, doing what the church told you to do. You shouldn't stop and rest unless, But he says here, these people that he's talking about, the Spirit says that they may rest from their labors. I know people, I've been around people, lots of them on their deathbed, who just say, "I'm done."
Yeah.
I'm tired. I've lived 80 years, I've lived 90 years, and I'm looking forward to going to the other side. And he says here, those people are blessed. And the people are blessed who rest from their labors.
Yeah.
Because nobody can take those away from you.
No, and as Jesus implied, store up for yourself treasures in heaven, which anyone during that period of time would have understood. Store up would have been a work ethic understanding of what is important. So, and there is, I don't know
If you don't
anybody.
get that crop harvested, you're not going to have anything for your family to eat.
I don't know. I mean, there's very few people who don't have to do nothing in order to survive, and
They don't have to do nothing.
to survive.
I
There's
don't
very
know-
few of them.
I don't know whether that means they are doing something or they're not doing something.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Kelly's
all right.
with me today.
You went to Duval.
I went to Duval. There's not very many people who can get by with doing nothing and survive. Very, very wealthy, and then I guess there are some aspects of our society today that the lazier it works out for you, the better it can be. But there's still yet all are going to have to store up.
In our travels in life, if you stayed with a multi-millionaire family for a while, and then you stayed with somebody in Honduras or Nicaragua who lived in a shack, you probably would be very, very surprised at which one of those two. And that's why Jesus
Who was happy?
Yeah, and that's why Jesus said it's tough for a rich man to go to heaven.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
So that money has that kind of drawing power when it comes to
It does,
what we
and
have.
it does. It still doesn't satisfy. And I thought what was it saying? My dad said, "The people that go home the dirtiest and smelling of high heaven are generally the most happy people." So,
That's good.
yeah. Going back to your statement earlier, we've talked about since the very beginning a judgment scene. We have one of those right here. Verses 14 through 20 are a proclamation of judgment that's going to happen, and there are people who were just annihilated. And the last part is this one where they're put in the wine press, and the blood flowed out of the press. Yeah, I've seen some horror scene movies where blood flows.
This is a lake of blood.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to see one of those.
No, it's not one. It's not on my bucket list of things to actually have a picture of.
And look at all the sevens you got in here. You've got 7 angels and 7 scrolls and
Yeah, the part we're about ready to get to, Revelation
7
15.
judgments.
Yeah, it is. This is again. We reiterate: don't get caught up in thinking that these have necessarily meanings related to us. These are, as you point out, and I happen to actually agree, that surprisingly, this stuff has happened, and it's not necessary for us to understand the 7 angels with the 7 last plagues.
I don't think God ever intended for us reading this 2,000 years later to make a calendar and put on there, okay, this is when that's going to happen, this is when that's going to happen, this is when that will occur. These are the leaders that are going to be leading in different countries in the world. I don't think there are principles and lessons that we all definitely can learn. But to be able to sit down and write on a calendar everything that's going to happen from day to day, week to week.
Well, Paul had to write to Thessalonians to tell them to quit acting like this was about to happen at any instant for them.
Yeah, go back to work.
Go back to work. and it was closer to their time than it was ours.
Oh, much.
So
Yeah.
depending on, and I say that it's closer to their time than it was ours, depending on your view. They may say we're closer than they were if they have an end of times view. But, that's where we're all going to be a little bit different on this topic. Won't you read the read the verses there that you're interested in reading.
From 15?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're going to look at chapter 15, verse 1, if you'd like to read along with us. Then I saw another portent in heaven, great and wonderful, 7 angels with 7 plagues. There's the sevens again, which are the last, for with them the wrath of God is ended. So there's some kind of judgment that's based on the wrath of God, and he says that happens when the angels come out. You'll notice as we get further down through the chapter. For with them the wrath of God has ended. And I saw what appeared to be a sea of, isn't this beautiful? A sea of glass mingled with fire. A sea of glass with fire coming out of it. And those who had conquered the beast and its image, okay, here's the beast brought up again. We hadn't heard from him since the last chapter. Considered the beast and its image and the number of its name. You remember the number? 666. And the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. So what they're doing is celebrating the fact that Moses, through God and through his Spirit and through his Son, are going to fight this beast. And as they do that, they're singing the song of Moses, because Moses delivered the people just like Jesus was delivering the people. The servant of God and the song of the Lamb sang, and here's the words of the song. Great and wonderful are thy deeds, O Lord God the Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, O King of the ages. Who shall not fear and glorify thy name, O Lord, for thou alone art holy. All nations shall come and worship thee, for thy judgments have been revealed. Okay, that would be a good place for me to stop reading and you start explaining.
No, because I don't really think there's that much to explain, except they're describing the scene after the God's wrath of chapter 14 has ended. But it is kind of unusual. Something they're getting ready to talk about is, there's 7 angels with 7 plagues, and those are going to be leashed on to wherever they're going, but that's not happening yet. Right now we're just talking about, he just finished up the other, and they had their harps and they were singing. What we could do with that. And they sung this song that everyone knew, and we've got another one of those worship scenes that's followed a judgment scene.
If you go back to the Exodus story, you'll have Moses singing, and his sister Miriam also sings in this celebration. That, according to here, is the Song of the Lamb. And the reason they sang that is because they were emphasizing how great and wonderful are the deeds of God. He's the Lord God the Almighty, and just and true are thy ways. There's a couple songs in our songbook that actually talk about the song of Moses and the song of the King of the Ages.
Yeah.
We're not going to sing that for you, but you can look at it if you have a songbook.
Trust me, folks, my edit button works.
There are several instances here to the sevens again, the 7 bowls, the 7 scrolls, the 7 angels. It's all the way through here, and here it is a couple more times.
Yeah. And then, of course, as soon as the song is sung, John writes, and after this, I looked, and I saw in heaven the temple, that is, the tabernacle of the covenant law, and it was opened. Out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues, and they were dressed in clean, shining linen, and wore golden sashes around their chests. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls, filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. and no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. Now this here again goes as you talked about earlier. We're full of sevens in this. If we had a deck of cards and we were playing, I think we've got four or five of a kind. 7 angels, 7 plagues, 7 bowls.
That might even be an inside straight.
Yeah.
If I knew what that was.
Yeah, well, hey. The 7 angels, 7 plagues, 7 golden bowls. Of course, every one of them had the sash. So, we've got all of this imagery, again, attached to a numerical value, wrapped in an illustration that we're to drive some meaning from.
Well, the trumpets are pretty simple as you go down through here. The trumpets are warnings, just like they used a trumpet in the Old Testament. If they wanted assembly, if they were going off to war, if they were going to get together, do something major, they would blow the trumpets and everybody would gather together. So these trumpets are to warn the people that they're writing to, which in some cases you and I have no idea who that is. And the bowls are the judgments that comes out of those scrolls. So you've got individual judgments and you've got individual purposes, individual warnings to this group of people who basically, it goes back to a judgment scene, who are going to follow the Lamb or going to follow this name of a man whose number is 666.
And this will also, with the wrath that these 7 angels, along with the 7 plagues, will complete God's wrath. And during that period of time, no one is to enter the temple until it's finished. Talk about your enigma. Enigma.
Means a problem.
Yeah.
Did you have a problem saying enigma?
I did.
I did too.
But here we are, a scene that if we were watching it on a horror movie, we'd be like, what in the world?
So is this a temple that's still on the earth, or is this a temple that's going to be rebuilt, or is it a temple that's in heaven?
Well, it says it's a temple in heaven,
Yeah.
But then it goes, and that is, like clarification, the tabernacle of the covenant law. And it was opened. And the tabernacle was supposed to have been, in Jewish history says, either stolen, destroyed, or in storage someplace.
Well, if you watch the
Indiana Jones series?
no, not the if you watch that too, but if you've watched the National Geographic documentary on the Ark of the Covenant, they say it's in some cave in the Middle East somewhere, or no, maybe it was Northern Africa, and all these religious people are guarding it and protecting it, won't let anybody in to see it.
Of course, Ezekiel writes another version of it. He writes in one of his visions where he saw the ark flying out of the temple, going back on its way back to heaven. Now, it's hard to trust anything Ezekiel imagines because it's kind of crazy, but doesn't mean it's not possible.
And that's why this is tough. You have different references to different things, and you're not told whether this is going to happen tomorrow, this is going to happen 2 years from now, but you're introduced to all these things, and you don't know whether they're on the earth or in heaven, or where does John see this? Was this a vision that he had when he kind of went up to the third heaven, or is this a vision that he had when he's sitting down on the earth and in the island where he was in jail?
And you have you don't know what to attach, where and what to attach the meaning to. Is the overall meaning what we're supposed to get, that the wrath of God comes as God dispenses of it but we don't always know when or how. I mean, we
And
got,
that's why people quit. That's why they give up on it.
yes,
It'd be like you or me going into an advanced calculus class in college. We'd just kind of sit there and look at the paper, really didn't have anything up here that you could transfer down here that would make any sense. So these people in the first century, they had their work cut out for them.
Oh.
They're trying to figure out days and months and years and
Meanings.
where are the meanings of the bowls and the scrolls and the angels and
yeah. And we got another second here where we go even a little bit deeper into the seven bowls. I think we'll go ahead and go there. We have a little bit of time. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the seven angels, "Go pour out the seven bowls of God's wrath on the earth." The first angel went and poured out his bowl on the land. And ugly, festering sores broke out on the people who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it turned into blood like that of a dead person, and every living thing in the sea died. The third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. Then I heard the angel in charge of the waters say, "You are just in these judgments, O Holy One, you who are and who were. For they have shed the blood of your holy people and your prophets, and you have given them blood to drink as they deserve." And I heard the altar respond, "Yes, Lord God Almighty, true and just are your judgments." Wow. I'm going to stop right there because I think it's more than we can even finish discussing here or even begin to attempt. But we have, again, yet another judgment scene. And halfway in the middle of this judgment scene, what breaks out? Worship. Worship. How it is the last place you generally expect worship to happen is in the middle of a judgment scene. You know,
where there's the wrath of God and angels that are bringing the wrath of God.
yeah. And yet people are clamoring. And this point, this is the angel. And again, another one of these nosedives of the weeds you could go into. The angel in charge of the waters. You know, that was his title.
There's one angel that had water, and there's one angel that had blood.
Yeah. And the other angels, this is the angel in charge of the water who proclaims to God how truly righteous he is. You know, you're holy.
You're holy and righteous, where this other image, this beast, the 666, he's not anywhere as close to what you are, so we should be following you instead of following this false god.
That's right. And though these scenes have parallel events, like everything that's just happened here had happened during the Exodus, the 7 plagues. You know, the plagues that happened, the festering sores that broke out, the blood that the blood in the water scene with Moses. I mean, we've got scenes of a wrath event that is talked about in the book of Exodus, in the judgment of Egypt over what they did to God's people.
I was trying to listen to you and look for something else that reminded me of what we were just talking about.
Go to it.
In Matthew 23, this is what Jesus said. "Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers." I always like it when they teach homiletics and say, you gotta get your audience, get the attention of your audience. Well, Jesus got their attention. He said, you serpents and you brood of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Now, notice how this is almost word for word what John says in Revelation. "Therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of the innocent Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all this will come and take place upon this generation. Now that kind of blood with the grapes and the smashing of the grapes and a lake of blood, Jesus is saying...
The drinking of the bowl of the blood.
Yes. And Jesus is saying to Jerusalem, you've killed the prophets and you've stoned those who I sent to you. So make up your mind who you're going to follow, because this kind of ill will is going to fall on this generation. Verse 36.
Yeah, there is... there is a lot of stuff that we could, or not stuff, there's a lot of information that could be used from various applications throughout the history of our understanding of God, beginning from one of the very first prophecies about the Son of Man getting his heel bruised and crushing the head of the serpent, the snake.
Genesis 3.
Yeah, so I mean, from all of these paint a picture of judgment and inevitably worship. Mm-hmm. Because it boils down to that in every part of our lives. We've talked about this a couple times during this thing. You know, the book of Revelations, one of its main focuses is to choose wisely, make the right choice. Because we have a play or a story or what would be the term today? It would be
a narrative.
A narrative, but I was thinking of the narrative that's it's a dream kind of narrative, like a nightmare kind of narrative, in the fact that when you see these kinds of things happening, I mean, it rattles you and shakes you, and it opens. Sometimes you walk away from a scary movie, you're never leaving the door unlocked for a while. You know, the people that watch Jaws, you didn't go swimming in the water for a while. I mean, there are purposes of being afraid sometimes in order to help you grasp the gravity of these decisions that you and I make every day.
Yeah.
So, I think next week we will begin at 16 verse 8. And we remind you to, if you have any questions, any comments you'd like to make, please let us know what they are, and we will do our best to tackle them as best as possible, understanding the fact that we might tell you we don't know too, because there's a lot of this we're describing what we're reading to you. We're not really telling you that it has any deeper meaning than that. Would you not agree?
Yeah. In the last part that we just read, for men have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink. And I read that passage in Matthew 23 that says almost exactly the same thing, but John adds this to that last paragraph: it is their due.
NIV is as they deserve.
As they deserved.
Yes.
Yes.
You got what was coming to you.
So you don't have to sit around arguing with God about what judgment he made, because he's going to make the right judgment.
Well, remember,
and he says here, not only is he making the right judgment, those people deserved what they got.
Well, Jesus even went further to say that anyone who doesn't repent and follow him is already, they've already said, I'm going to take what I've already got coming to me. Mm-hmm. All the forgiveness does is let you escape the judgment you were already due anyway. You know, you didn't. I mean, it's not like you were a bad person. I don't care how good you are. Without Jesus, You've got the same judgment coming, you know. So next week we will begin in Revelation chapter 16, beginning in verse 8. And again, I encourage you to read it, study it a little bit, and if you want to have a question that we have on air about something that you've read, if you get it to me quick enough, we can possibly do that.
And next week we're going to study something that I've talked to people who you would think this word was in the Bible 150 times, and it's in the Bible once. We'll take a stab at trying to figure out what the Battle of Armageddon is.
I see the word, the Armageddon.
Yep. Well, that's the only time it's in the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean it's not accurate. There's just one time in the Bible.
Yeah. Well, listen, on behalf of Steve and I, we wish you a happy and joyful week, and we hope everything in your life is going well. If you have any questions, any comments, please do not hesitate to give us a call. And on behalf of Steve and I, thanks. Right there. There you
Go
go.
Bucks.